All right, welcome to Ductus Exemplo. This is a shot from the Pocketlab Air device from Pocketlabs. I actually was a part of the Kickstarter, got a couple of these very early on. This is a screenshot of my first recording when we had the forest fire stuff getting bad out here in California. I kind of wanted to see what's going on. Unfortunately, in this shot, what you see is it starts at a very low CO2 level that's actually lower than the lowest levels that are supposed to be even outdoors or globally, and then it just drops to zero, which is kind of a clue that it's not accurate. When I got the information that the Pocketlab Air was getting this bad zero level of CO2, I kind of went to the website. I was checking out the help side, looking around. I was like, dude, I gotta figure out what to do to fix this. I saw some references to trying to rebalance or whatever the CO2 levels to fix it, but I couldn't seem to figure a way to do that. What happened was I ended up going on to the support section. I made a phone call. I was like, hey, can you guys help me? What ended up happening kind of blew my mind. He identified that it was an older version based on some of the data he saw, because I sent him a screenshot that you guys just saw. And then he kind of went above and beyond and went ahead and offered to send me a new unit. And he didn't just do this right away. They fixed it immediately, and within 2 days I had another sensor. This is really important because these forest fires, they don't last an extremely long amount of time. And so the sooner I have that sensor going, the sooner I'm able to measure CO2 levels and kind of what's going on. So major kudos to Pocketlab Air especially. Thank you to the whole company. They have been absolutely amazing. This is not a paid presentation. It's kind of just talking about the data I get. I'm just amazed that they have helped with this sensor issue and we're able to help so quickly. So I do fully recommend them. I would totally encourage anybody who's looking at air quality issues to absolutely get a Pocketlab Air. They measure, the three important ones that I like to follow are the carbon dioxide, air quality, and particulate matter sensors. Particulate matter specifically, they measure the micron size, some of the 10 micron particles, 2.5 micron, and 1 micron. Now, most sensors do not measure 1 micron particulate matter. That's just so small. It's also one of the most dangerous pieces because it can get down even into the bloodstream. 2.5 generally can embed deep in the lungs and is also considered quite dangerous, especially when you get numbers that are pretty high. And finally, 10 micron is usually where you find the pollen stuff. So that's where a lot of allergies are caused, and you see a lot of like allergic reactions to, haywood or hay fever or whatever. So here are the new sensors that Pocketlab sent out to replace the ones that I was having some issues with. Now, we're going to jump right into this data here. The air quality index is kind of telling you when the numbers are going to be dangerous or there's a lot of bad stuff in the air. Anything over 50 gets unhealthy, and then over 100 starts to affect everybody, even people who aren't really sensitive to it. And by the time it's over 150, it's basically you shouldn't be doing any heavy or heart increasing exercise in it. It's going to be potentially damaging your cardiovascular system by getting some bad stuff into your lungs and creating a lot of extra stress on the body. Now moving over to carbon dioxide levels, ideally you'll have levels that are below 1,000. Anytime you start getting higher than that, we've got a lot of evidence showing that there's cognitive decline. It can make you feel tired. It can cause all sorts of problems. That is one of the things that I'm suspecting, so this is just a theory, that this may be significantly impacting our productivity. Not only that, we have a lot of evidence showing an increasing pattern with the CO2 levels globally, and those increased levels tend to be amplified indoors where as people breathe and have fewer plants and things that are going to create a good exchange of CO2, we tend to have much higher levels. Sometimes I think some cities are averaging 1,500 indoors, even though we say that the global average is over 400 but less than 500. We'll just keep it pretty vague. Moving over to particulate matter, again, the 10 micron stuff can get into the lungs. I want to point out this data here because we're seeing that this is around 15 where it peaks. Now what happens here is we turn on a sensor. I had done a little test prior, so this kind of captures some of that. And then we turn on a a mini, or no, this one was an evaporative cooler, so it brings a significant amount of air inside from outside. It does technically have a filter, although it's not like some HEPA certified filter. Now, this is while there's some fire stuff going outside, there's a significant smell of smoke, but AQI outdoors was less than 100. So we shouldn't go over 100, and as we can see with our AQI numbers, we don't. Now, when I opened up that mini split, or the evaporative cooler, sorry, I keep saying mini split, we see that those numbers for 10 micron jump pretty quickly, straight up to 15 particulates. So it's probably doing a little bit. Where it starts getting interesting is our 2.5 micron sensors, much higher. And this is the more dangerous one. So that shows us already that the particulate matter that's more dangerous to people has much higher numbers. So that means it's much worse than the stuff that's less dangerous. Going down to the 1.0, we get really bad data because, again, we increase not just a little bit. We go from about 25 to 35, almost 40. So this is very dangerous. Now, this is different from an AQI score of 50. Anything above 10 is considered unhealthy. This shows us also that the fire itself seems to have a lot more particles that are much smaller. I've also read some articles that there's virus particles hanging, or bacteria or whatever, hanging out in the air now even more. And we're seeing a larger preferences of, I think it's like desert valley fever and some other diseases that are basically tied to this, this forest fire stuff. Now, part of the reason we did this test was because, as we can see over here on our CO2 levels, we already said that over 1,000 is bad. So we can kind of see that we did a little bit of test at first, and we see that we were at probably about 1,400 parts per million. And it drops when we open up to under 1,000, which is where we want to be. Now, this sensor was a long-term sensor. It went over time. Here we did a good long test. We opened up the evaporative cooler, and we see that, again, we immediately go down in the CO2 levels to less than half of what we were at. In fact, that gets real close to the number where we expect to be the outdoor level, which means excellent, excellent use. Now, we only did this for about 15 minutes, and then we were measuring what's the half-life of this particulate matter, what's going on, how bad is it? And what we see is it takes a pretty good long time to go increase. We go over to here, and 1640, which is 440. Now, this time was not accurate, so just take that with a grain of salt. This was actually in the morning, and yet it shows afternoon. Regardless, so it says by 1640 here, we were at about the same levels of particulate matter we were at before we did our test, which started right around here. See, I don't think it gives me time, does it? Oh, yeah, it does. There we go. So about 1324 here. So we do see that we do a 15-minute jump, and it takes a good long time to go down. We do go down significantly at first, but because it's like a half-life, it kind of flattens out the curve and goes down slower. Over here on the other side, we again see that it goes down quickly, and then it actually increases a little bit pretty quickly and then kind of slowly, so that by the time we're at 1640, we're still at levels that are under where we were. Now, again, we're doing some testing and all that, so we'd have to go back, look over the data to do the spike. The spike goes over 1,500, definitely into the unhealthy territory, but that's not because of the air getting brought in. So one of the big questions here is, where's the balance between healthy air and low carbon dioxide levels that are like good enough to kind of function cognitively in a good manner? So particulate versus CO2. I've been looking at systems that we could implement that would do better filtration. Zender Systems would be one. It's an ERV. However, they have stated specifically that their systems are not designed to function in environments where there's fires, and they recommend turning them off. So this is kind of a test on what do we do? Do we pump it for 15 minutes every hour as a low pump? How much is it going to damage the systems? How quickly? What do our filters do, and how well do they function? We can get more into all that data another time. This is kind of introducing these sensors and the data. It's also talking about Pocketlab and how much they benefited me, and we're very quick to fix some issues that I had. So again, very positive experience. I wholeheartedly recommend them. And that'll be it for today. Have a good one.